So your home is under contract and it's now time for the home inspection. So whether you are buying or selling a home, the home inspection is something that brings anxiety and apprehension to both parties. Hi, this is Andrew Smith with the Andrew Smith team of eXp Realty. And home inspections are something that cause a lot of anxiety. So I figured I'd spend just a few minutes with you today kind of running through what to expect on a home inspection and provide some guidance for buyers and sellers on some things maybe you should or shouldn't do. So first and foremost, the hard part's done. You've got the property under contract. The parties have agreed to the price and the terms of the escrow period, and everything is moving forward. It's a time when, whether you're buying or selling, you've emotionally committed to the process at that point for the most part. You know, the buyer's got everything moving forward with regards to their loan and their financing, and they're starting to picture themselves in the property, planning out who's going to get what room and what changes you might be wanting to make. The seller's moving on. At that point in time, once you're under contract, they can get on with their plans wherever it is that they are planning to move to. And as you start to go through that, there's just a couple of main hurdles that need to be overcome. And one of those is the home inspection. Now, if we go back a year when inventory was exceptionally tight and properties were flying off the shelves in a matter of days, if not hours, we didn't quite see as much on the home inspection. Quite often, buyers were waiving that inspection contingency. They may still get one done, but they're not making any part of the sale contingent on that inspection, or they were doing it for their information purposes only because they knew if they brought up something on the house, the seller would just not agree to make any repairs and just move on to offer 2, 3, 4, or 5 that they may be holding. Well, now as the market's kind of shifted and things are returning to normal in most areas, there's negotiation that takes place beyond just the initial price. And part of those has to do with the home inspection. Now, I don't want to categorize and say all home inspectors are out to make bigger issues than sometimes they certainly are, or they are, I should say, but it does happen. Again, I'm not generalizing because there's some fantastic home inspectors out there, and we've worked with several of them. There's also inspectors out there that they are going to do anything and everything they can to make sure they're completely covered from a liability standpoint, which I can understand. And as a result, they can create panic and an anxiety with a buyer where it's not necessary. And so there's a fine line that you have to go through. There's not necessarily a lot of training involved to become a home inspector. There is certainly some, and not every inspector that I've ever met is an expert on all systems and functions of the house. They have a general idea, but they're not a plumbing expert. They're not an electrical expert. They're not a heating and ventilation system expert, or certainly a pool expert. I've actually seen inspectors cause damage to pool equipment by hitting buttons and changing valves that they shouldn't. But anyway, with that in mind, it's important to work with your agent and thoroughly understand what the results of the inspection are, and not be afraid to ask the inspector questions yourself, especially if you meet him at the end of the inspection. Now, as far as the purpose of the inspection, please remember that you're buying a used home. It is not brand new. Quite often it will come with a service contract or a home warranty, depending on what state that you are in. And that's going to give you a certain element of protection. But there are going to be cosmetics. There are going to be some things that are considered minor maintenance going forward. And in that inspection, what you're really looking for is you're looking to validate the decision that you've made to purchase this home and make sure that there's nothing overwhelmingly wrong. You know, like the electrical system isn't going to start a fire, or the heating and air conditioning is not heating properly or cooling properly. There's sinks that are stopped up. They don't drain properly, faucets that don't turn on, light switches that don't work, GFI outlets that do not work. Items like that can be considered more of a health and safety item. Those are the things that you're really looking for. And as a result, a seller doesn't take too kindly when the buyer and the buyer's agent simply submits a copy of the 35, 40, 50-page report and says, see summary sheet for repairs. It doesn't mean that a seller is going to repair a cracked switch plate or replace a screen that has a small hole in it. Those are cosmetic, and you're going to be better served by focusing your attention on the major issues that you find, if there are any. Again, you're not buying a new home. Now, from the seller standpoint, sellers I know, I've dealt with many of you where you get very upset. There's a lot of pride of ownership in your home, and you get extremely upset that how dare the buyers even ask for anything. You got to let go. You've got to realize that they're coming into it and they're going to want some things done. That doesn't mean it's a knock on you or your abilities to maintaining a home. An inspector is always going to find something. But it's a case, again, of working with your agent and rationalizing the things that are legitimate and reasonable and the things that are a bit excessive. And again, it's going to be a negotiation. You're going to have to negotiate those items through and come to a meeting of the minds. It's not about one party winning and one losing. It's about trying to find common ground to keep everything moving forward and realize that the ultimate objective on the seller and buyer side is to achieve the end goal, and that's getting the transaction closed, assuming that there's not something major that would prevent that from happening. Now, there are some, I don't even know how to describe it, unique cases. So I have a condo up for sale currently, and in all my years of doing this, we received a request for repair on that condo, and all I can preface it to say is this is exactly what you don't want to do with a request for repair. There was one cabinet in the kitchen that had some water staining on it from a leak that had occurred previously from a refrigerator. It wasn't a leak in a wall, it wasn't anything, and it was one standalone cabinet. And where that water stain was in the base of the cabinet was going to be covered by the new refrigerator going in. Nevertheless, we received a request for repairs asking that the entire kitchen be replaced prior to closing. That's an unreasonable request. The kitchen hasn't changed since the first time you saw the home and wrote the offer. That is an example of what not to do on a request for repairs. Hence, seller was very offended. Even though he was willing to repair the cabinet, that wasn't good enough for the buyers. They said, well, all the cabinets are going to have to come out. It's not going to match. If we take the cabinets out, we got to change the countertops. That transaction fell apart. And I feel bad because it was the perfect property for everything I knew about this buyer. And it was just being way over the top on what was being asked for on a repair request. Likewise, the inspector in this particular case also wrote it up that I suggest an electrician investigate the ceiling fan in bedroom 2 as the light bulbs are inoperable. Well, the light bulbs in bedroom 2 on the ceiling fan were not inoperable. 3 of the 4 bulbs worked fine. 1 didn't come on. Electrical problem? I say burned out light bulb, which is exactly what it ended up being. Same inspector. Front door light is inoperable on the front porch. It's not inoperable. It has a dusk to dawn setting on it. So when you flick the switch, when it's bright sunlight in the middle of the day, the light doesn't come on. Nothing wrong with the light. Those are just examples of, making sure that you pick the right inspector and then you work through the issues and the questions with your agent to make sure that the request that you put in is reasonable for all parties involved. Now, the inspection, as I've mentioned, it's a hot topic. It's something that, gets those nerves up for buyers and sellers, but it doesn't have to be if everything is looked at in a reasonable manner. Hopefully that's helped give you a little bit more information or insights into the inspection process and what you should and shouldn't be looking for as a result of that inspection. If you have any particular questions or would like any additional information, please reach out. I'm always happy to answer those for you. You can reach me by email at andrew@theandrewsmithteam.com or give me a phone call at 888-447-9650.